Hello and welcome to After Scientology Straight Up and Vertical, the weekly show where Tony Ortega and I go over the week's reporting as given on Tony's Substack, which you should be subscribed to, by the way, if you are not, so you get daily notifications of what's going on in the world of Scientology. And Tony does not pay me a dime to say that. We're just doing the show together, so I figure I should plug his work. So, hey, Tony.
Hey, Chris, as you can see, I'm out in the Poconos this weekend. That's the Delaware River behind me, and just enjoying the weather out here late in mid-August afternoon.
Awesome, man. Absolutely nice. Beautiful, beautiful weekend. Okay, well, let's go ahead and go over some of the reporting because there was some kind of interesting stuff this week, starting with a request for and granting of a new judge in Leah Remini's lawsuit. There was... Judge Fahey had been replaced with Judge Barbara Shepard. Thoughts, ideas, reporting on this?
Right. So when Leah filed her lawsuit on August 2nd, there's just sort of a little lottery that goes on at the Superior Court. And Fahey was chosen just sort of randomly. And it's not unusual for a plaintiff like that to exercise what's called a peremptory challenge, which means there's no reason given. They don't have to say anything. They just said, sorry, we want another judge. And, you can read the tea leaves with him. I mean, some of us looked into him. He's kind of a cantankerous reputation. But I think, he dismissed some litigation against the LAPD and its corruption. And I think that might have been what Leah was concerned about. I don't know. I haven't talked to her about it. But for whatever reason, they decided to ask for a new judge. It's kind of like a little bit of a, who knows? Maybe you get somebody better. Maybe you get somebody worse. She ended up with a female judge. Her name is Barbara Shepard. And I talked to some reporters who cover that court. They felt that it was an improvement for Leah, that she's probably a better person to handle this lawsuit. If you go on to the online forums, there are definitely people who criticize her as well. But I have a feeling those are not the most reliable things to rely on. To me, the most interesting thing was that at one point she'd actually been an assistant inspector general for the LA Police Commission. And so that means this is somebody whose job was to help keep the police accountable. And that probably is somebody that Leah would be interested in because, of course, the LAPD's co-option by Scientology is probably going to be an angle in this lawsuit. And one reporter that I talked to said because of that, she has a feeling Scientology will challenge this and want to get a different judge. So we'll see. It's early days. There's not even any hearing scheduled in Leah's lawsuit yet. So it's interesting to see the early moves, but she does have this new judge, Judge Barbara Shepard.
How you happen to know from your research on this, how many of these challenges can Scientology only do one preemptive challenge themselves, or can this get into some kind of, spitting match between them on judges?
That's a very good question. I should have looked into that. I think they each get one free one. After that, you have to, in order to get a judge to recuse, you have to have reasons. You have to, it's a much different thing. But I think they each get one free one. I might be wrong about that. I should have looked into it. Thank you, Chris. I will.
Oh, cool. No problem. And is in the sequence of things, we know anti-slap's probably going to come up at some point, as we mentioned before. Is serving Miscavige, do you think, going to be the next big hurdle on this thing? Because CSI and RTC are served now, but not Miscavige yet. And that's classically been a game of where's Waldo, right? Where's Miscavige?
Well, unfortunately, each of these lawsuits that have been filed in the last 4 years have gone through this headache of how do you serve David Miscavige. Yep. There were the 3 that were filed in 2019. None of them has ever been able to serve Miscavige. Only the trafficking lawsuit, federal lawsuit filed by Valeska Paris and the Baxters in 2022. That's the lawsuit where the judge declared that Dave is evading process servers and named him an official defendant. But then, of course, that lawsuit got forced into arbitration. So, in order to get to that point, Valeska's attorneys filed so much paperwork about all the efforts they made trying to find Dave here and there and everywhere else. So, I have a feeling Leah's team is going to have to go through that as well. They're going to have to start sending process servers out to Hollywood Guarantee Building. They have to send them to Flag. Then they're going to have to come back to court and say, look, Judge, we've done everything we can, declare him a defendant. It's a headache. And, Miscavige knows that, and he does everything he can to make it difficult. But as far as I can tell, I think Leah's going to have to go through that as well.
Yeah. All right. Well, that'll probably be the next big hurdle then before we move on from anything there. Now, also, you took a day and actually broke down details on the case, going through it point by point. And I'm curious, about your comments on that and what stands out.
Right. So she filed on August 2nd, and right away, Yashar Ali had the whole complaint up. I grabbed just the stuff that was very specific about her and put all that language on my Substack. Her specific problems with the podcast being canceled and all the people at Aftermath being harassed, all the stuff that's very specific to Leah. What I left out of that, because I was in a hurry, was the stuff at the beginning that was kind of an introduction about this is what Scientology is. This is who L. Ron Hubbard was. I mean, I figured we could look at that later. So then I went back to that and I looked at that first section, and it was more than just sort of like what Scientology. What her team was doing was describing fair game and describing how Scientology has these policies written by Hubbard that they follow to the letter, where they're investigating people, lying about people, smearing people. And these are the policies that underpin that. Now, they just cited the policies and did some brief quoting. And I thought it might be interesting to pull out the full policies. So that's what I did the other day, is I went and pulled out those full policies that they were referring to. And I have to tell you, I was really interested in the response. I heard from longtime Scientologists who told me, Chris, I've never seen these policies. I didn't even know that they had these in OSA. And I thought that was really interesting because because of the reporting I do, I've sort of focused on those really disgusting policies about spreading lies about reporters and all those. So they were pretty familiar to me. But it was interesting to hear from various ex-Scientologists that they had not seen these policies before.
Well, let me, since you bring that up, let me tell you, because you and I have never talked about this, but when I talk about 2013 and going down the internet rabbit hole, the two final nails in the coffin, and I remember this very distinctly for me, so it's on this exact point, was finding online, the OT materials were the final thing, but the second to final thing were these policies, the battle tactics and the OSA references in Hubbard's own writing. This was not Mike Rinders or Marty Rathman or somebody else writing church policy. This was L. Ron Hubbard. Flat out saying, ruin people, destroy them, find out what's creditable, what they feel defensive about, and threaten that. And I was like, this is straight up blackmail and extortion and criminal activity.
Right.
Undeniable. And that was a real nail for me in the coffin. And I think it has been for other people as well. So I'm, the more we can expose that stuff, the better.
Yeah, like I said, I think it's mainly background for the lawsuit, and it may not come up that much in the litigation itself. But I just think Leah's team did a brilliant job bringing those into the lawsuit. And there are a couple of others that I may get to as well that they also cited that I thought were really. They cited a security check that looks to me like a precursor to Joburg. And they didn't cite it for the questions being asked in the sec check, but for something else. I may get into that. That was kind of interesting as well. But you and I think tend to assume that people know what we mean when we say a word like the Joburg. But anytime you put up a policy like that, people are shocked. There's always people that cannot believe that Scientology subjects people to these kind of interrogations and pressure tactics.
Yeah, they are brutal. And when you don't want to be in that room and you're forced to be, and the guy is sitting between you and the door and he's trained to not let you out, this is not a Catholic confessional. We are talking,
right.
Like a police interrogation here. And that's how Scientology conducts its confessionals. routine.
Yep.
So
Right.
to be clear about that, I had another question for you. Even with the various motions that Scientology is going to file, and we know there's going to be, mountains of them, it occurs to me that, Leah is not just going to sit around patiently waiting for years for something to get done. Her temperament and whatnot, she's going to want to move this thing forward. And so I'm thinking, do you think her team, this team, or, that it's possible with some aggressive, really like creative, legal eagling, so to speak, that they can actually kind of push the system a bit faster than earlier cases we've seen on this? Or do you think they're going to have to go through the same nonsense?
That's really up to the judge as far as, and actually, I did see a reference to this new judge that she got to the trial more quickly than other civil judges, which is a good sign.
Mm.
Now, of course, I'm a little bit skeptical that David Miscavige would allow anything to actually get to a trial. But if she's that kind of judge where she's like, look, let's go, get this done, that's good for Leah, because Scientology loves to slow things down. And like, for example, Leah has in there in a footnote, I think you and I talked about this last week, that we talked about the, dealing with the arbitration thing, that all of that even though it talks about her background in Scientology, all of the counts, all of the actual charges like defamation, infliction of emotional abuse, all of those refer to her, that what happened to her after she left. She's very cognizant of the Bixler decision at the appeals level, saying that you can't force someone to arbitration for things that happen after. But there's actually a footnote in there where it says, we're anticipating they're going to try this, and we want to make it clear all of our allegations are about things that happened after she left, and arbitration doesn't apply. But I got to tell you, Chris, that doesn't necessarily mean Scientology's not going to try.
Right.
That's what Scientology's like. They may file a motion for arbitration, and just because it'll take 6 months for the court to deal with it, because as far as David Miscavige is concerned, that's a good use of his time, right? So that's the thing that's so amazing about them, is they have this scorched earth approach where they throw everything. What I haven't seen in a while, maybe they'll try to do this time. They've tried to disqualify the attorneys.
Oh, right.
In the Monique Rathbun case,
Right.
in the Garcia case, we haven't seen that in a little while. So that's one of their tricks. Maybe they'll try to get one of Leah's attorneys thrown out. They'll file the arbitration thing, even though it's impossible. They'll file an anti-slap. They'll file but I really think their number one defense they think is going to work is the free speech thing. They're going to say, did we call Leah Remini names? Yes, we did. But that's protected by the First Amendment. And she's a celebrity. The bar is higher for getting defamation against a public person. So that's going to be their approach. I think that Leah's team has thought about that, and you can see in their complaint where they're saying that it's not about name calling, it's about coordinated campaigns to hurt her financially. I think that's brilliant, and I think that's where the real crux of this litigation fight is going to be fought. So Scientology, I have no doubt, is going to throw a lot of crazy shit at this, but with a good judge, it won't stick.
No, and I think this point's really important. Maybe another way of saying it is, you can say what you want, but maybe Scientology is fighting for the legal right here to have justification for ruin them utterly. But the fact you don't have legal justification to ruin someone's life utterly, you just don't have that right. That's not something the law allows for. So there are distinctions here, and I'm sure the legal teams will definitely make that clear as the case.
The other thing I think people should prepare themselves for is that I think often we expect that in a lawsuit like this, if it was against Monsanto or some company that's been harming people, as soon as the lawsuit is filed, suddenly they're like, oh, we didn't mean that, and they make some changes or something, and they're caught red-handed. Scientology's not like that. They'll double down. They'll put in a filing that says, are we calling her names? Are we trying to destroy her life? Yes, we are, because she's trying to destroy ours. You know what I'm saying? It's like, we've seen this time and again where you expect them to try to sugarcoat things, but in their filings, we've seen them in cases like I'm trying to think, like the DiCrescenzo case and some others where they just stated outright, we can treat people in the Sea Org the way we want to. I mean, they have no shame. And so I just tell people to prepare yourselves, because they won't necessarily try to pretend that they haven't been doing this to Leah. They'll not only admit it, but then they'll try to prove that they can do it all day long.
That's right. No, they're proud of it. This is work as far as they're concerned.
Right.
Yeah, that's right. And interpolating her and making her lose out on opportunities, financial or otherwise, that is by design. So they are absolutely like righteously justified in this. I mean, I'm just, for them,
that's how they feel. Yeah.
It's high fives all around. Right. Okay. Now, just a humorous note. Oh, actually, let me throw something else at you real fast. Just because you and I got to be on Court TV this week.
That's right. Yeah. And I don't think either one of us had any idea.
Yeah. It just popped into my life an hour before it happened. But it was fun.
It was very fun. I was on Court TV quite a bit during the first Danny Masterson trial, and I hadn't heard from them in a while. And so when they called me for this, I thought, okay, that, I've got a relationship with them. But then they said, but, we're going to have somebody else on first. I said, sure. And there was you. I had no idea. I was so excited. That was great. You did a great job.
Thank you. I was nervous as hell. Absolutely. And I was wondering about the echo and everything else. And so I felt like all I did was talk about myself because I was answering his questions. But everybody says it was great and it was educational.
No, that's what he wanted. I mean, the way, I don't know if you saw the whole introduction, but the way Vinny set it up, he was kind of saying, I don't know, she's making all these allegations about this organization. I don't know if they're true. And then you came on and said, yeah, it happened to me. Same thing. And I think that's what he wanted to hear. And I think that's why it was really powerful.
Good. Well, I'm glad it rolled into that. And then Claire was on, and then you were on, and it was a real like boom, boom, boom. And it came out of nowhere for me. I had no idea Court TV was doing this, but I'm expecting as time rolls forward, there'll probably be more attention on this, because every day, even the judge reassignment, I'm seeing reported on Fox News. This whole thing is going to be headline story through its progress, I think.
Yeah, when it was Valerie, when it was Laura DiCrescenzo, there's always a big thing at the beginning, and then it settles down, and then it's just Ortega telling people step by step what's going on. But this time, I mean, it's going to be every step. Everybody's going to be reporting and thinking about it and talking about it. I mean, this is why it's so powerful that Leah has filed this lawsuit, and it's going to, I think it's really bad news. I know Miscavige, his natural intention is to slow it down and make it last as long as possible. But in this case, that may not be such a good decision.
Exactly. PR wise, it's a terrible decision. Okay. Last two things I wanted to go over was because it put such a smile on my face. Scientology getting in trouble copyright wise for the Smurfs of all things. What happened on this one?
There's a blog in Switzerland by a couple that are real avid protesters of Scientology, and they had written a blog post about this childcare in Zurich, whose name is Smurfs Childcare. And I think they were mostly outraged that there was a childcare being run by Scientologists with Scientologist children. The largest newspaper in Switzerland picked it up and did a story and interviewed the folks, and they said that there's 12 kids, so it's a small thing, and that they have a city permit, but they're not given city subsidies, and just sort of talked about what happened. Then they quoted like an ex-Scientologist there saying, no, this is really bad, these kids are being raised in it as kids and all that. Well, 2 days later, that same publication and like 3 others in Switzerland all reported that the Belgian rights owner to the Smurfs is really unhappy and is going to send a cease and desist to these people to change the name. And the way he said it was so cool. He was like, the Smurfs are not involved in politics or religion, and we want nothing to do with Scientology.
Nailed it. I'm just going to say that it's hilarious to me because Disney or Scientology has violated Marvel and Disney copyrights for years, and the House of Mouse is infamous for pursuing like cease and desist on anybody who messes with their stuff, and they've never touched Scientology. So it was funny to see the Smurfs step up, and well done, you know. The other thing I had to comment on this week, because I think we're seeing, maybe it's just exposure bias, but it feels to me over the last few years that there are more Scientologists stepping up trying to get into public office. And we see a story out of Colombia, a guy named Gamboa, who's a Scientologist out there running for office of some kind. What's the deal there?
Well, you know, I'm always interested in this. I'm always interested anytime a Scientologist runs for office, and we've seen it in places like Oregon and Houston and Nevada. It's very rare, but every once in a while, a Scientologist will run for office. This was interesting to me because we've actually watched this guy over several years. You know, there's this whole group of shills for Scientology that do this interfaith thing where they pretend that Scientology is part of this religious community, and this guy's one of the worst. He calls himself a rabbi, but I think his qualifications as a rabbi are highly suspect. And he gets to float around on the free winds. You know, he gets all the perks, but I think they like him because he's in Colombia, and you know they have made an effort in Colombia. And so over the years, we've seen this guy in various, like he provided some sort of a benefaction at the opening of a ideal mission in Panama. It's crazy, you know. He's just one of these characters that Scientology always has at their beck and call. Well, it was brought. I actually have a correspondent in Bogota, Colombia. Believe it or not, Chris, a great guy who tries to keep me up on what's going on down there, and he let me know that this guy Gamboa had gone on Facebook Live and had said, "Look, I'm suspending all of my interfaith efforts. I'm running for Bogota Council." Now, in a country like Colombia, that's actually a fairly significant political body. It would not be like running for city council in the United States. It'd be sort of more like sort of an intermediate federal kind of thing. And I asked my source, I said, okay, so what? Maybe he's a long shot. You know, how much popular support does he have? And he said this thing to me, Chris. He said, in Colombia, popular support is not the only important thing.
Exactly. I actually put that in my notes because I was like, that is hilarious.
Yes. So apparently this guy might have a shot. This guy might have a shot. And, you know, Scientology might be interested in one of their shills getting into an important political position. So we'll keep an eye on that. There's been some shenanigans in Colombia, no doubt, since they opened the Bogota Ideal Org. It's not something I can keep a real heavy eye on, but we'll see what happens with that guy.
Excellent. All right. Well, let's start wrapping up here, I guess, folks. Thanks very much for coming around and listening to us blab on about this. Dare I ask Tony my usual question here about any previews?
No, you can't ask me about what's coming up, but I will tell you there's one other thing that you and I dealt with yesterday, and that was I totally understand why Amy Scobie was excited about this document. It's totally fun. It's supposedly written by David Miscavige in 1983, where he's using all this foul language and telling Pat Broker they're going to put together a fake video of L. Ron Hubbard footage. And it was treated as if it's this whole new leak and it's exciting. And but you know, I did a little searching. It's been around forever. It was on ARS in 1995. Okay. And Miscavige himself addressed it in a sworn declaration under oath that this was a forgery. It's been certified as a forgery by a different court. And I have to tell you, as soon as I heard, as soon as you brought it to my attention, Chris, and as soon as you said 1983, I was like, because if you know the history, that was an interesting year in '83 because Hubbard had been in hiding for 3 years. Miscavige was not yet in control. There was definitely a sense that things were a little bit out of control at that point, and there were some significant breakaway groups, and they were doing some really, they were doing some agitation, including hoax documents. And I just, as soon as you said '83, I said, this document's a little too good to be true, and it's in that period when breakaway groups were faking things. And so I did a little looking, and I did find that Miscavige sworn statement. So and looking at the document, I had to say, Chris, I think it's a fake. And I understand why people are excited about it. And I know there are people that have always believed when they heard certain, Ron's journals, they thought they were hearing somebody else. I don't know about any of that, but I really don't think we should take that document seriously.
I had to agree after looking at all the evidence on it. The thing about this is Scientology is always worse than you think. This is a mantra that continues to prove itself. I'm really not kidding. It really does. Every single time I thought I've hit bottom, something comes up that is like, what? And it's even lower than you think it is. And at this point, I feel like I've gotten to the bottom of the whole thing. But you're always surprised by this crap. So when something like this comes along, oh, they're faking Hubbard's name. Oh, they're faking Hubbard on video. Of course they are. Like, it's not any stretch to believe that. But that doesn't mean every single bad thing you ever hear is actually true. And this is one of these little points where we really have to, I'm going to say this, I'm going to put this out there because I have to struggle with myself on this, is fine, believe what you want to believe, but when the evidence shows otherwise, take it seriously because
believe me, I've been there. I've been taken in by a few things over the years, and it's not fun. And you kind of have to just own up to it and say, yeah, I believed something too easily that wasn't true. It's not fun, but I think it's important that we do our best to make sure we get the record right. And so I was really glad you reached out to me and we had that little conversation behind the scenes the other night.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I was very happy about that because at first, me not having seen those earlier docs, I was like, holy shit, man, did you see this? And then it was like, yeah, let me show you a couple things, So it was perfect. And that's good critical thinking. So what am I going to say, All right, Tony, thanks for helping out this week or talking with me about all this stuff. As always, enjoy your bike ride and your time out, and I'll talk to you soon. Folks out there, subscribe to Tony's blog, subscribe to this show. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.